Good evening, and welcome to the pilot broadcast of CBC-EP, also known as the Canadian Broadcasting Company Earth Pole Nightly News. Live from Oasis in Canada, I'm your host, Captain Obvious. Let's dive right in. Our top story tonight regards the Atlantic Empire as a coordinated attack was launched upon the nation earlier this afternoon. The nations of Amazonia and the Pacific have sieged New York, the capital of the Atlantic Empire, and Forsythia AE, a town north of the capital. While there is no clear motive for this particular attack, there is history between the two nations dating back to Earth Pole V2, where the Atlantic Empire was known as the Atlantic Republic. Back then, Amazonian had sieged New York a couple times before Siege War, due to a grudge held between the old leaders. Despite this, Amazonia was defeated by the Great Coalition, upon which the Atlantic Republic was a part of, and the nation would cease to exist. We will continue to follow this story in the coming days as the siege continues, and if anybody has any leads regarding the motive, contact me on Discord. Our next piece follows an ongoing story revolving around the United States. The crisis began when the U.S. became aggressive towards other nations in North America, mostly those in the real-life American borders. Canada has been watching the U.S. for quite some time, and what recently drove our nation to be more active in North American politics was the Californian-U.S. conflict. Allegedly, the reason why the United States had become so aggressive towards California was because California was supposedly funding rebel groups in the U.S. Thus, the nation used this as their casus belli. In other words, justification for war. California's announcement had stated that they supported independent states, and the nations within North America and the United States took negative implications from the statement, despite the fact that no explicit hostile intentions were stated by California. Shortly after the Californian statement, the United States enemied California and besieged San Diego. Canada not only took notice of this, but also took up arms and deployed our troops to San Diego to defend it from the Americans. In the end, our defense was successful, and California thanked us for our valiant actions. This act of war sheds light on the character of the United States, establishing themselves as a bully to other nations in North America. Before San Diego, there was an incident between the U.S. and the Republic of Texas, where the Americans demanded Texas's leader, DGW Gamer, to pay 20,000 gold in exchange that they not siege Texas and to prevent any further conflict between the two in the future. It should be noted that Texas made no aggressive actions, nor was hostile to the United States in any way at the time, further showcasing the abusive power the U.S. uses to force smaller nations to do their will. With that, Alaska and a few other prominent nations had created a coalition to stop the advancing forces of the United States, who had retaliated at the Siege of Lone Star. The battle itself was a proxy, considering the fact that the U.S. would evidently be fighting on the side of Texas. Unlike San Diego, however, the Americans would come out on top in this battle, forcing a retreat from the Alaskan forces. A couple days ago, the current president of the United States, Adequate Ash, also known as Azula on Discord, was talking in general chat on the server with Alaskan President Revolution and Vice President Benny Bag of Donuts. During this conversation, Ash asked if Alaska was planning to siege Canada, and shortly after the question was posted in the chat, both Rebel and Benny replied with a simple yes. However, this response was actually intended for a previous question Ash had posted, and despite the uncanny timing, the new American president took the opportunity to screenshot the string of messages and post it onto the Earth Pole Live outlet's new suggestion channel with no context whatsoever. The screenshot was posted onto Earth Pole Live, stating that Alaska had plans to invade and siege Canada, simply headlining with the question restated. After speaking with Revolution, we had cleared up the misconception, and it turned out to be nothing but Adequate Ash attempting to create conflict between Canada and Alaska. It can be assumed Ash had known about the history between the two nations, and used it to his advantage as relations back then were a bit rocky. While there were a few conflicts in the past that had almost escalated into war, our nation and Alaska had always managed to sort each other's differences and maintain a healthy relationship between one another. Canadian-Alaskan relationships are still going strong as of today. Before Earth Pole V3 had launched, Cooked Rabbit had laid claims on part of Greenland, sharing the rest of the landmass with Yggdrasil. Cooked Rabbit had decided to join Canada for the time being, in order to use the nation's outpost and land claim bonus in order to help boost their progress. However, in the past couple days, it that Cooked Rabbit's nation, the Commonwealth of Greenland, has been impudent to its surrounding neighbors. Furthermore, it has been many weeks after the launch date, and the Commonwealth of Greenland has not formed, even though they have intentions to do so. They have also allegedly used Canada's might and growth as a form and means of deterring attackers, using Canada as a buffer zone between them and the rest of North America. Therefore, God's tyrant, the King of Canada, has given the Commonwealth of Greenland 5 days to come to a decision between two options. The first honors the initial agreement made after the launch, which is to finally break away from Canada and form an independent nation. The other would be to merge with Canada, meaning that the Commonwealth of Greenland would become a duchy, just like the other duchies that make up Canada. Our final story tonight circles back to the United States once more. In the past couple days, 2 of America's high ranks have resigned from their positions and have left the United States altogether to create their own independent nations. Thick Boys, former president, has created Florida, and Brad Fry, 420, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, has created Essetia. The presidency has passed on to the Vice President Adequate Ash. There also has been some allegations going around that the U.S. is going to merge with the Republic of Texas, with 3 states already having left the nation. On top of that, the former Emperor of the United States, Juanet, has had his own rumors saying that he will be making a town in Denmark, possibly leaving the U.S., or making a colony for the U.S. not been confirmed, nor do we know which option he will choose. Adequate Hash had an announcement regarding his self-promotion to president and the current status of the nation, stating that the United States has not been affected by the many recent changes in the nation and seeks to form a treaty called the Washington Pact between Florida and Essetia that would guarantee mutual defense between all 3 nations. When Thick Boys had become the President of the United States, he pushed for the one thing that everyone loved: peace. He had agreed with the Atlantic Empire to give them their desired claims so that the Atlantic Empire could expand and grow as they should have. Canada had stepped in to act as a mediator and third party to ensure that the pact would be held up on both ends. With that, Thick Boys, God's Tyrant, and Red Dino, President of the Atlantic Empire, had agreed on appropriate and formal treaty terms and formed the U.S. Atlantic Treaty. After Thick Boys had left the United States to make his own nation, Florida, Adequate Ash rose to power and immediately took action, stating that he does not agree to the treaty as Boston is in the Atlantic Empire's claims. He had made a counteroffer, but there has not been any further news on this newly developed story. That's all for tonight. Thank you for watching CBC-EP Nightly News, live from Oasis in Canada. This is Captain Obvious signing out. Tune in next time.